to have us have us gather for the first time since we've had our OSO convention. And so Zooms are back in progress for the month of April. And with that, tonight we have Dr. Molly Helmlinger, our newest, soon to be after the June 30th, new president. So there we go. Now, tonight, she is going to be speaking on authentic attributes of authentic leadership. And I'm excited to hear this, Molly, as I believe we all are. And with that, the mic is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, Kathy, for putting everyone on mute. Um, you guys,
Okay, just a minute. And then Molly, you'll have to unmute yourself.
okay, thanks, you guys. Really, I appreciate you all taking time out of your schedules, personal and professional, to attend tonight's Ohio State Organization's lifelong learning session on key attributes of authentic leadership. This session is being recorded and will be available to view also on YouTube, and it will last approximately 1 hour. I prefer interactive sessions, but due to the time constraints, we will I will basically be speaking, and you will hopefully be actively listening. I think you'll find it engaging, though. Just a brief, you got brief. I have 38 years in education, the majority of it being in administration, quote unquote, leader. And I have a consulting firm called Spirit Led Consulting, which does systemic evaluations of struggling school districts. Okay, let's do the first slide, Kathy, please. Let's first understand what I mean by authentic. It means being true to one's personality, character, or spirit. Okay, being true. Another way to think about it is being genuine, credible, sincere. You know, when you are credible, sincere, genuine, you're true to yourself, that demonstrates integrity through your words and through your actions. And it aligns with, when you're authentic, your moral compass. We all have a moral compass, and a lot of people don't talk about it, but each and every one of us has an internal moral compass that guides us. Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we are supposed to be and embracing who we actually are. And let me say that again because it's huge. It is the practice of we embracing who we actually are rather than what people think we're supposed to be. Being authentic is liberating. It's a force that can drive you to do incredibly wonderful things for your organization, for your chapter, in your professional life, in your personal life. It helps you take a path that is consistent with who you are and one rather than one that's expected by everybody. If think of someone who tends to be a little bit more judgmental, and is their view of you actually who you are? Being authentic is knowing who you are. You're able, when you're authentic, to develop deeper relationships because it's based on trust. It's based on integrity. We've all been there where people have proven to us they can't be trusted. And that really damages a relationship, doesn't it? But if you're authentic with people, you'll develop more connections and meaningful relationships with them. Okay, what do I mean by leadership? That's a huge word. But in a Kathy, can you move to the next slide? Thank you. In a nutshell, when I talk about leadership, it's the willingness to step up and put your true self out there to lead. Okay, leadership. It's about your willingness to step up and be true to yourself at the same time and lead an organization, lead a chapter, whatever. It is leading in a proactive and strategic way. You know, I am a strategic thinker. I very much am always proactive, and that causes more forward thinking and innovation rather than reacting. Oh my gosh, so many administrators and in my work tend to react instead of be proactive. You know, reacting means you're lacking your planning. You're not planning the way you need to be planning. It's an afterthought that you're responding to. Leadership is all about being proactive and strategic. You know, authentic leaders, not yet, Kath, thanks. Authentic leaders stretch the boundaries because I love to talk about boundaries. We all have a comfort zone, but I like to use the term boundaries because all of us have boundaries in certain areas. You know, like my professional boundaries tend to be very, very large because I need them to be. I like to be inclusive rather than exclusive. And so my boundaries tend to be large. Other people feel very uncomfortable with large boundaries. You know, another way to look at it is if you were a picture frame, would you be a 2x4, a 4x8, 4x6, 5x8, 36x36? What are you? So authentic leadership lends itself to stretching those boundaries because you're comfortable with them. At the same time, an authentic leader has to respect the boundaries of others. So when you're leading people, you know, you're going to have if you have 18 people in a room, you're going to have 18 different boundaries. Now, some boundaries with certain people, you already know. Oh, they have the boundary of a football field. Oh, that person has a pickleball court boundary. That one has, I don't even think, maybe a 4 square boundary. But it's important to know as a leader what it is, okay? An authentic leader in leadership takes responsibility for discovering the potential in the people they lead. Think about that. How can I develop the potential that people bring forward for their unique, authentic self? That's part of being a leader, okay? All right, Kath, authentic leadership. So what does that mean? After we think about authentic, after we think about leadership, there are 3 defining characteristics of authentic leadership, I think. One is self-awareness. And we're going to talk more about these. 2 is genuineness, which is accompanied by modesty and humility. And 3 is empathy and ethics. Okay? So when we talk about self-awareness, when we recognize our own imperfections and flaws, we're being authentic. Because remember, none of us are perfect. None of us. Now I'm sure we have interacted with people who think they're perfect, but in reality, they're not. But it's important for the authentic leader to remember that we are all imperfect and we are enough in our imperfections. Let's think about that. We are enough in our own imperfections. And it starts with acknowledging that we're not perfect. You know, it's freeing to be imperfect. Think about it. It lifts that enormous weight off your shoulders to try to be perfect. Now that's really stressful, isn't it? It makes it a very intense time if you're constantly striving to be perfect. And I know that is something that I have been certainly embraced for, 3/4 of my life to be perfect. I was raised that way to be perfect. and anything less than perfect was not good enough. And it took me a very long time to understand, to get to the point where I could say to myself and to others, I'm not perfect. I have flaws and I'm imperfect. And that is liberating. Okay. Authentic leaders feel connected to and genuinely care for the people they are leading. Those connections build rapport and trust. To me, in any relationship, the most important thing is trust. And how do you build trust? Trust is built over time through experiences with one another. And it's about being true to yourself and being honest with yourself and others. Okay? So, when we think about authentic leadership, you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible about dealing with, working with, connecting with, building a relationship with, those are different levels, by the way, with individuals. We truly are unique. You truly are unique. I'm unique. You're unique. Everyone is unique. We're like snowflakes. Have you ever heard that snowflakes, there's never a repeating snowflake in design? Same thing with us. There is no other person in the world like you. And a lot of people don't understand that. But we have to embrace that as authentic leaders. Okay? For example, what impacts one person one way may not impact another person in the same way, right? A mentor years ago shared with me, years and years ago, and boy, it has resonated ever since too. Said, Molly, any person's strengths can become their weakness in the eyes of another person. Your strengths, take a moment here in our group and think about a strength that you have. I mean, it should just immediately pop into your head. How can that strength become a weakness? For me, an example is my energy level. I have a high energy level. Anybody that's around me for more than 40 seconds probably realizes that. If you're in a room for me for longer than that, some people are like, you're exhausting. You're just exhausting. And you know what? I understand. I embrace it. I understand it. But I also know that my energy can be very intimidating to certain people. And it took me a long time to realize that. And it took mentors and good friends to say, wow, your energy is really something, Molly. But sometimes it's just as overwhelming. And when people are overwhelmed, what happens? They back up. They're not at their best. And as authentic leaders, we need people to be at their best. Okay? So remember, be flexible in your approach. Okay. Another thing about authentic leadership, another key attribute is mental strength. Mental strength. Kathy, can you move the next slide?
Sorry.
That's okay. Now, what do I mean by mental strength? My background, I've been very involved in mental health. From a personal standpoint as a caregiver, and also as a counselor, as a trained counselor. Mental strength for me, when I hear the words mental strength and when I use them in this context, refers to the ability to cope with and overcome challenges, setbacks, and adversity. Mental strength. In order for you to cope with your difficulties, with your setbacks, with adversity, you have to have the mental strength. And mental strength, you all have mental strength. Some of us have deeper mental strength than others. Some of us probably didn't even realize, okay, I know what she means. Okay, I don't call it that, but it's mental strength. It encompasses cognitive, emotional, and behavioral traits. Okay? Cognitive, emotional, and behavioral strengths, including resilience, adaptability, optimism, persistence, emotional regulation, and self-confidence. That's a lot, mental health. So let's take a picture of that. As educators, I know we are all educated, aren't we? We love learning. We just love learning. You wouldn't be here if you didn't love learning, because we call these lifelong learning sessions. And I love that. I love that term. So, many of us, most of us, all of us, I'm sure, use our brain capacity a lot. Okay. But how are we using that brain capacity to lead more effectively, efficiently, to reach others, to maximize their potential in our organization? How are we doing that? In order to answer that question, takes mental strength, because people must be able to trust you. They must be able to know that you're a woman of integrity, that what you say really is what you believe. How you connect with people is important. And part of that is being able to be adaptable to others. I know we've all experienced people that were the boss that had no concept of adaptability, had no concept of what it means to be under them. As authentic leaders, we have to understand who we are and what we are doing and how we are impacting others in our chapters, in our organizations. Leading swirls. I like to call it swirling. If you look at the screen here, you can see that all the colored backgrounds, and you're like, oh, okay, that's okay. I love color. I love color. I'm a color coder, always has been. I think probably since the first grade with my big crayons. But I love color. It just sort of helps me remember certain things. When you look at this background, first off, you see the key, right? Oh, that's a pretty key. But the other thing is you see all these colors swirling around, and it never really settles on one color. To me, that is what leading looks like, because it is never a straight path to where your goals are and to meet your goals. There's never a straight path or only one way to get to a destination. The road is winding, and there's multiple roads that we can take. And eventually we're going to get to where we need to be. But as an authentic leader, you use your mental strength to try to make sure that we get to there in a set amount of time. Leading can be really uplifting, can it? Think about a time that you were just so thrilled with how you led. Seriously, think about a time that you were leading something, whether it was a book study, whether it was a nature walk, but you were leading, and it was uplifting. Why was it uplifting? What did you do to have it be uplifting for the others you were leading? You need to be able to answer that question. and hopefully be able to repeat the positive things that resulted in things being uplifted. Leading can also be very exhausting, can it? It very much is a mental exhaustion, very much so. So, how do we make sure that our mental strength stays at a level that we can be as good as we can be? That is part of authentic leadership, understanding where you're at. So, being uplifting, like on the top of the mountain and the sunshine is so bright you need to wear shades, to exhausting, where you feel like you are in quicksand and you're in survival mode. If you work on your mental strength, that will help you tremendously. There and leading, some people, if they have never been leaders in a leadership position, thinks it looks easy, or they think, I can't be that challenging. I don't want to do it, but it can't be that challenging. We all know as leaders that it is challenging, yet we still take that leap. We still step up and lean into it. Leading is about understanding that there are potholes, that there are detours, and that there are dead ends. A leader knows how to maneuver around those potholes, how to follow the detours to get to where we want to go, and to not go too far where it will dead end. Okay? So you have to develop and nurture your mental strengths in order to thrive. Because how often are you thriving or are you surviving? Thriving or surviving? There's a big continuum there, isn't there? Some days it feels like we're really, way over here, uplifting. And then other days it's, I'm just in survival mode. I'm just trying to make it through the day and maybe get through a few things on my checklist. So mental strength, you guys, as authentic leaders, is huge. I like to say that mental strength does not always have to roar. Think about that. I like this saying. Mental strength does not have to roar. Sometimes it truly is the quiet voice that whispers deep inside your spirit. You have to listen for that quiet voice that whispers within. Listen for it and discern. It's a huge part of being an authentic leader. Okay, Kath. Perseverance. What do I mean by perseverance? Why is that a key attribute in authentic leadership? Because you have to be able to persevere. Perseverance is a continued effort to do or achieve something in spite of difficulties, opposition, or discouragement. There will always be an abundance of naysayers, won't there? Whenever you're trying to accomplish something within your chapter, something within your organization, there will always be those naysayers. Sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they're not so quiet. Sometimes we let that silence mean they're in agreement when in reality they're not. Sometimes we let that silence know that they are in agreement, but they're being quiet because they're worried about what others are going to think. And we're going to get into that. So when we think of perseverance as a key attribute, it really is continuing on your quest, continuing on your goals, objectives, mission, vision to achieve in spite of the difficulties, in spite of the oppositions, in spite of the discouragement. A person, there's a saying that says that, if you have people that are trying to stop you, just run ahead and get in front of the parade and look like you're leading the way because you really need to be leading the way. If we wait to have 100% agreement with where we need to be going, especially when we have to move it forward, you're never going to get there. You aren't. A large part of my consulting deals with that. And the reality of where your school district is now, which is way down, to where it needs to be. And the reality is, you can make all the excuses you want. You can talk about how it used to be. You can talk about, well, we've never done it that way before. You embrace the tradition that got you in the bad place where you were to begin with. But that's not going to work. You have to make sure that you are moving forward. You have to accept the challenge and rise to it. It's just part of the process. There is a process involved in everything. Remember when we talked about that strategic thinking, be forward thinking, strategic? That's a process. Okay? So we have to be aware of the process. I love a quote by Benjamin Franklin. Someone referenced about my books back here. Some of them are just about biographies on different people that I've come and read across. Some of them are about quotes that I just sort of instill things in you. Benjamin Franklin is well known for saying energy and persistence conquers all things. Energy, remember we talked about mental strength, energy and persistence conquers all things. Think about one time that you quote unquote failed. I'm not a big believer in the term failed, but in education, we use that term quite a bit. But fail. If you had continued on and really thought through what you were trying to accomplish, could have occurred. That's what perseverance is about. Trying beyond the 19th time to the 20th time with innovation and forethought. I am a huge fan of Winston Churchill. I think about what he did during his time as prime minister in England is just phenomenal. One of his quotes is, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue and persevere that counts." Wise words. Wise words. Okay. Remember, success is not final. There's always other things to be accomplished. Failure is never fatal. It's not going to kill us. We got to learn from it, but that's the way it goes. All right. Another key attribute, vulnerability. Okay. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but when I think of vulnerability, you may be envisioning, I'm a counselor. You may envision, I don't want to talk about that ooey gooey stuff. I love the fact I have a doctorate that I love statistics. And so I'm very much a statistics person, but I also have that counseling background. So I have sort of both. But when I hear vulnerability, I'm defining vulnerability here as a key attribute in the context of relationships. Okay? Being vulnerable in relationships. It signifies your willingness to be open and honest, to share your true self, and at the same time, be open to the possibility that you're going to have negative consequences or be ridiculed. You're like, why would I do that? Why would I open myself up to possible negative consequences and ridicule if I share my true self? It's a good question. Part of being honest about who you are and what you represent enables you to find that strength within you to go forward and lead. If you are constantly worrying about what people are going to think, you're not going to be able to lead the way you need to lead. There are 3 areas in vulnerability: emotional honesty, building trust and connections, and accepting your imperfections. Let's take a look at each of those. The first one is emotional honesty. It's about being willing to share your thoughts, your feelings, and your vulnerabilities with others, even if it means facing the possibility of criticism or outright rejection. Okay, let me give you an example. All right. If you are emotionally honest about, you know what? I am really upset that I'm talking, I'm talking to someone that has been gossiping about me and behind my back. And I'm just sort of getting it by way of other methods. I need to be able to approach that person who is gossiping about me and say, I am so offended and upset about your gossiping and lies about me. Let's talk about it. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had a conversation like that? Have you ever thought you wanted to have a conversation like that, but you didn't because you were afraid of how they would respond? I think we all have. I think we all have. There is a time, there is a place, there is a way to approach people that are offending you, and most of it has to be done in private, one-on-one. I want to encourage you to do that as you lead your organizations, because believe me, I've seen it firsthand for other leaders. The dishonesty, the inability for people to be willing to share how they're feeling about what's going on around them, what's going on in their organization. Being vulnerable as an authentic leader means you're willing to have someone have that conversation with you. Okay? At the same time, the person speaking with you needs to be willing to hear what you have to say. That leads to communication. That opens the door enough that you can at least have a conversation. Building trust and connections. Connections is the C in my theme for the next biennium on focus. Connections. It is so important for us to be able to reach out to one another and make deeper connections, because deeper connections allow us to move further, faster. It expands those boundaries I was talking about earlier. Connections build trust in relationships, and that allows us to really move forward. And the third one was acceptance of imperfections. Remember earlier we talked about, we don't have to be a perfectionist. None of us are perfect. We all have imperfections. We all have flaws. And we need to recognize our own flaws and try to deal with them and temper them. Vulnerability involves embracing your flaws and then striving to minimize their impact on others as you lead. Okay? Think about that. It's understanding your flaws and your imperfections and trying to minimize those flaws so that you can lead to higher achievements within your organization, within your chapter. Okay? I think it's important for people. I like to share with people, and when I'm counseling, say, you need to show people your rough edges. How many of us show people our rough edges? What are your rough edges? I will share with you one of my rough edges is I pace hard. I pace hard, I pace long, I pace fast. There are many people that want to mosey. I spent a long time in Texas. You don't want to mosey, just sort of mosey. Let's lead by moseying, Molly. Let's lead by moseying. No, I was and still am someone who paces hard, paces fast, uh, and it can I can leave people behind because of that. So I'd like to have people around me that will let rein me in a little bit. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to slow down from 150 to 22 miles per hour in achieving goals and where our organization needs to be. But it does mean that I can't leave 89% of the people behind. Correct? So it is important when you're talking about your vulnerabilities, your flaws, to understand that. It took me a long time to understand that because I was very successful as a superintendent by going fast, by going quickly, because we're way down here and we have to be up here. So it's hard when you're having success in your career or in your chapter, and others are saying, "Whoa, we need to slow down a little bit." But it's been my experience as a OSO second VP and first VP that I think a lot of our chapters are moseying. We want to embrace energy. We want to embrace what it can be even better. Okay? So we want to take what's doing the great things we're doing in our chapters and build upon them. We want to take what's not working in our chapters and put those aside. Put those aside to make room for things that hopefully may be more effective. All right? So how do I show vulnerability? Well, I have shared with you during this time what it means to be vulnerable because I share with you some of my quote unquote flaws. That's a negative term. It sounds like a negative term, but it's not. It's a term. We're imperfect. There's only one person in the universe that's perfect, and I'm not it, and neither are you. So embrace your imperfections, right? Take responsibility for your vulnerabilities because it empowers you. I love the fact that DKG has tulips that you could purchase that were about, women were empowering. I love that. We don't talk enough about empowerment. Okay. And women, let me tell you, we're our own worst enemy. All my mentors have been male. Every single mentor I've ever had has been male up until my exposure to DKG. And now I have many female mentors, and that's been wonderful. But we need to reach out and embrace that invulnerability. Okay. When you do that, you are in control. You are in control of you. Okay. If you're not in control of you, who is? Somebody is. If it's not you, who is it? You need to think about that because if you're allowing others to really control your ability to do just great things, to be who you are, your authentic self, you need to grab back that control. Okay. Seize it. Own it. Okay, Kath. Forgiveness. Oh my gosh, you guys. When you hear this, when you think about a key attribute of authentic leadership is forgiveness, what comes to mind? What I mean by forgiveness here is a conscious decision to let go of the negative emotions towards another person or yourself. Because don't you think sometimes you think about forgiveness, don't you think immediately, okay, I'm really working hard to forgive this person that I feel has really wronged me. But the first thing you need to do is to self-forgive. And that is being less critical of yourself. As a counselor, I like to say, and it's true, that depression is anger turned inside. Think about that for a minute. If you ever get depressed, and we all do, it really is you're angry with yourself. And one way to not be angry with yourself is to forgive yourself. Let go of the self-criticism that's going on up here. Okay? A poet once said, to forgive is one of the greatest gifts you ever give yourself. I think that's true. It took me a long time to understand that, but to forgive yourself is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. You know, forgiveness enables you to release negative emotions because you don't forgive somebody for, oh, thanks for that great gift. Oh, thank you for making me happy. Thank you for recognizing my strengths and talents. Thank you for complimenting me. You're not forgiving things like that. You have to forgive people because someone or some people have been very negative towards you. And your anger, your resentment, your bitterness is getting in the way of your authentic self. How can you be an authentic leader if you cannot forgive others? Because it causes you to be angry. It causes you to have resentment. It causes you to be bitter. It does. And that seeps into our very being. And then if you allow it, it seeps out onto others. And we don't want that. Okay? Forgiveness is all about a personal choice, making a personal choice. It is a decision from the heart. It truly is. Because the natural instinct is to return evil with evil, isn't it? To return a smack with a backhand smack, right? But forgiveness allows you to release that negative emotion and replace it with more positive emotions. Negative emotions, it is just a fact, a human fact, that negative emotions can truly take a deeper root in you and cause you to not be the person that you were meant to be. Okay? I'm sure you don't wake up every morning and say, whose life can I make miserable today? Who can I hurt today? Let's make a list. You don't do that, right? That's part of forgiveness. I try to start the day, surely, with gratitude. You know, wake up and what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? You know, rattle off 3 things you're grateful for. Close your eyes right now. What are you grateful for? Rattle off 3 things in your mind that you're just grateful for right now. Gratefulness leads to a lighter heart. That's being authentic, okay? Weed out those negative things. Pull them up by the roots and get them out so you're fertile, so that your soil is fertile, that your heart can harvest what the good things that you have inside it, okay? You know, forgiveness is not a one-time act. Have you ever forgiven somebody and then they turn right around, you know, a day or two or a couple of hours later and doing the same thing again? Well, you know what? Forgiveness is not a one-time act. It just has to forgive. That doesn't mean you're a sap and you let people do things to you. Because remember that part of that vulnerability is, you know, calling people in. All right. What is the next key attribute? compassion. Now, what do I mean by compassion? Because people have, sort of envision different things. When I say compassion, I'm talking about a deeper feeling that motivates you to take action to help alleviate another person's distress or suffering. Okay? It's a deeper feeling that motivates you to take action to help alleviate another person's distress or suffering. Now, I say another person, but who is the first person that you have to demonstrate compassion to? Who do you think is the first person you need to demonstrate compassion towards? Point to that person. Point to that person. I need you to point. There you go. That's right. Thank you. All right. We are trained, and I know I was. It's selfish to think about yourself, but it's not. My counseling training, it's not. How can you be a caregiver if you don't put yourself first? How can you care for others if you yourself are a wreck? You can't. You have to put yourself first, okay? To be able to have the things, the strength that you need to care for others. The same thing is for compassion. How can you be compassionate towards others if you're not compassionate towards yourself? What do I mean by that? That means being kind and understanding yourself. Being kind and understanding. Recognizing that, you know what? Not every day is going to be a bed of roses. And that we have to be mindful of what we're thinking and what we're feeling. Okay? It's about acknowledging that everyone, including yourself, is imperfect. Keep saying that, but you've got to have it in here. Got to have it in here. We're imperfect, and therefore we are prone to missteps. We are going to make mistakes. Sometimes they're little mistakes. Sometimes they're huge mistakes. And as long as they're not fatal, you just keep treating yourself with the same understanding and care you would others. Compassion also does mean that you are genuinely concerned about others. You're prioritizing their needs, their well-being. A large part of it is suspending judgment. Alleviating their fears or their concerns, and striving to be kind and supportive. That's what I mean by compassion. Okay? Plato says, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle. We are, aren't we? Some of us are deep into a lot of battles. Some others are raging a war within themselves or with others. So compassion comes into play when we do that, okay? Compassion really does come into play, just like vulnerability. The last key attribute to authentic leadership is yourself. Becoming an authentic leader requires discernment, which leads to wisdom about ourselves. You don't hear that term very often in leadership. When I think about my own doctorate and the 2 masters and my bachelor's, no one talked about discernment. But it plays such a vital role in authentic leadership. Discernment can be thought of, you guys, using different words, interchanging words, but it really is like profound insight. Discernment means you have insight. It's profound insight. It's profound understanding. It's going way beyond the surface level. Way beyond the surface level. I hope that as a leader, I am someone that people understand that I go way beyond a surface level. Even though I'm strategically thinking and I am trying to be innovative and trying to establish deeper connections with people, I still have to discern what's going on around me and how that is impacting not only others, but myself. Okay. So authentic leadership requires us to routinely, often, okay, routinely slow the pace down, which is really hard for me to do naturally, and take an in-depth inventory of ourselves. I will share with you that that was not something I did early on in my career. That just wasn't. I was too busy doing all these things and being successful, and oh, people just oh my gosh, look what's going on, la 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 la. But going from districts to districts and going from here to there, you know, it's easy to get caught up in that and continue to do what you're doing because it's been successful. But you've got to remember that there has to be discernment and taking a hard look at everyone you're impacting. Okay? It's an honest assessment. It's an honest assessment of who you are, what your guiding principles are, where your moral compass is pointing, and evaluating where you are in life's journey. So when you see yourself as an authentic leader, it requires you to ask the questions of who are you? What are your guiding principles? LES. Where is your moral compass pointing? And evaluating where you are in life's journey. And then if you extend that to leadership, it really is, what are your guiding principles in terms of leading your chapter, leading your organization? What are you doing in order to achieve what you want to be able to achieve as a chapter, as a state organization, which is myself saying as incoming president, where do we want to be? And it's not just up to me as the president-elect. It's up to all of us, okay, to be authentic about who we are and what we want Ohio State Organization to be. In the end, it is important to remember that we cannot become what we need to be by remaining who we are. Certainly as a state organization, and certainly as a chapter, and certainly as a person. We all need to grow. We all need to move forward. You cannot do that if you're standing still. You cannot do that if you're not being authentic. You cannot be what we all want and desire our organization, especially Ohio State Organization, to be if we don't apply the key attributes of authentic leadership. So, as we conclude, Kathy, Thank you. So, when you think about where you are as a leader, what comes to mind? If you were asked to list your strengths as a leader, what would they be? You should be able to list those very rapidly if you have discerned where you are as a leader. If you are struggling to do that, that is something I want you to encourage you to do. Find out what your strengths truly are. Find out what your limitations are and work at developing those limitations into becoming strengths. Okay? So as we look at being authentic leaders, embrace the fact that you have stepped up to be a leader. Embrace who you are now, right now, this where you are in life, where you are in your journey. Embrace it. Be proud of it. And then ask yourself, where do I see myself in the future being able to apply these key attributes to the organizations I'm leading? Because that is where it's at. Being able to be our authentic selves, yet being successful. I want to thank you for attending tonight, and I appreciate you taking the time. And I want to thank Kathy Tenney for doing the PowerPoint in terms of moving it forward, and as well as I might have done the content words, but Kathy did the beautiful illustrations. So thank you, Kathy. And I want to thank all of you. So Kathy, can I see everybody's face here at the end? Okay. All right. So thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, truly, truly. I am looking forward to meeting many of you that I have not met at the the conference. I am really looking forward to working with the past presidents of OSO who have been mentors and will continue to be mentors. And I'm really looking forward to working with all the members in our state organization. Take care and God bless. Have a fantastic Easter.
Thank you, Dr. Molly. We appreciate you.